In the 1870s, oil was the technology transforming the modern world. It lit homes, moved through rail networks, fed factories, and created fortunes almost overnight. But John D. Rockefeller discovered something more important than finding oil. You did not need to own every oil well to become powerful. You needed to control the roads the oil had to travel. Refining, transport, storage, distribution, pricing, scale. More than a century later, the world is racing into another technology that looks completely different: artificial intelligence. And this time, the system is global. The United States leads much of the frontier AI, cloud, and chip design race. Asia sits across critical semiconductor, electronics, and manufacturing supply chains. Europe is asking how much cloud, compute, and digital infrastructure it should depend on from foreign providers. Financial centers from Singapore to energy and capital-rich markets are asking where the enormous investment behind AI infrastructure will earn its return. And businesses everywhere are asking a simpler question. If AI becomes essential, how much control will they really have over the technology they depend on? The raw material is no longer crude oil. It is compute, data, models, and electricity. The railroads have become AI chips, semiconductors, data centers, cloud computing, and digital distribution. Today's AI giants are competing across all of those layers. And that makes the history of Standard Oil unexpectedly useful, not because AI companies are Standard Oil, but because Rockefeller understood something fundamental about how economic power can accumulate around infrastructure. The question is once again bigger than who invented the technology. It is, who controls the bottlenecks everyone else needs to use it? Standard Oil was founded in 1870. Rockefeller did not begin by controlling oil production. He focused on refining, the stage that turned crude oil into products people could actually use. Then, he attacked waste with extraordinary discipline. Standard Oil brought activities in-house, found uses for refinery byproducts, invested in research, and pursued lower costs. But efficiency was only part of the story. Scale gave Standard Oil bargaining power with the railroads. The company could promise large, steady volumes and negotiate transport discounts that smaller refiners struggled to match. In Cleveland, Consolidation moved at astonishing speed. The Library of Congress records that in the first 3 months of 1872, Rockefeller bought out, shut down, or bankrupted 22 of 26 competitors. The advantage began reinforcing itself. More volume lowered costs. Lower costs strengthened pricing. Stronger pricing and transport economics made acquisitions easier. Acquisitions created more volume. The business was no longer only selling kerosene. It was building a system around the flow of oil. By the late 1880s, Standard Oil controlled roughly 90% of American refineries. That number matters, but the deeper point is how the power was assembled. Refining scale, railroad economics, purchasing, storage, pipelines, distribution, information, capital. Control at one layer strengthened control at another, and eventually that system produced a political and legal response. Journalist Ida Tarbell documented Standard Oil's practices in a famous series of investigations. States and federal authorities pursued antitrust action. And in 1911, the United States Supreme Court found Standard Oil in violation of the Sherman Antitrust Act. The company was broken into 34 separate businesses. That history is important for what happened next in American competition law. But it is also important for a simpler business lesson. When a technology becomes essential, the most valuable position may be the control point around it. Now look at artificial intelligence. The popular story is often about the model. Which chatbot is smartest, which benchmark is highest, which new release is faster. But the economic system underneath AI has several layers. First, chips, and networking. Second, data centers, electricity, and cloud capacity. Third, models and developer tools. Fourth, distribution, search engines, operating systems, productivity software, phones, social platforms, and cloud marketplaces. And finally, the applications people and companies actually use. No single company controls this entire stack. That is one of the most important differences from Standard Oil. But power can still accumulate at individual control points. And those control points are already geographic. A chip may be designed in the United States, fabricated in Asia, assembled through a global electronic supply chain, installed in a data center in Europe or the Middle East, and used by a company thousands of kilometers away. That means AI power does not sit neatly inside one country. It moves through a chain of countries, companies, infrastructure providers, and capital owners. And wherever that chain becomes difficult to replace, a control point can emerge. The first of those points is compute. In the first quarter of NVIDIA's 2027 fiscal year, the company reported more than $81 billion of total revenue. More than $75 billion came from its data center business alone. That was 92% higher than a year earlier. Those numbers do not prove monopoly. They prove something else. Compute has become one of the most valuable inputs in the AI economy. A frontier model needs more than clever software. It needs accelerators, high-speed networking, memory, power, cooling, and enormous engineering coordination. But NVIDIA is only one part of the chain. Advanced AI chips depend on foundries, memory, semiconductor equipment, packaging, substrates, networking components, and enormous amounts of electricity. Much of that ecosystem stretches across the United States and Asia. So, when governments talk about semiconductor sovereignty, export controls, or domestic chip investment, they are not only talking about technology policy. They are talking about control over one of the most valuable inputs in the AI economy. If chips are scarce, access to chips becomes strategic. If inference is expensive, the company that can lower the cost per useful answer gains an advantage. And if new hardware arrives faster than competitors can redesign around it, the hardware layer shapes what the software layer can economically do. Rockefeller cared about rail rates because transport determined the economics of oil. AI companies care about compute economics because compute determines the economics of intelligence at scale. Then comes the layer that turns chips into usable capacity, the cloud and the data center. This is where the AI story becomes a capital allocation story. Microsoft reported nearly $32 billion of capital expenditure in a single quarter in fiscal 2026, much of it tied to GPUs, CPUs, and data center infrastructure. It said its AI business had passed $37 billion in annual recurring revenue and, on its April 2026 call, expected roughly $190 billion of capital expenditure for calendar 2026. Meta reported more than $31 billion of capital expenditure in the second quarter and guided to between $130 and $145 billion for the year. Alphabet earlier guided to $175 to $185 billion of 2026 capital expenditure. Amazon said its second quarter AWS business was running at a $169 billion annualized revenue rate, while both its AI and custom chip businesses had passed $25 billion annual revenue run rates. These figures are not directly comparable. Accounting definitions and periods differ. But together they show the physical reality behind the software story. AI scale requires land, energy, servers, networking, financing, and years of construction. The model may be digital. The moat can be made of concrete. And where that concrete gets poured matters. The United States has enormous advantages in hyperscale cloud, capital markets, and technology platforms. For Europe, the issue is bigger than regulation. European industrial companies, banks, insurers, automotive groups, and engineering businesses will consume enormous amounts of AI. The strategic question is whether they become mainly customers of infrastructure built elsewhere, or whether Europe can build stronger control points of its own. Asian economies sit closer to many of the semiconductor and electronic supply chains feeding the build-out, while also building their own AI capabilities and infrastructure. And in energy and capital-rich markets, another question is emerging. Can access to electricity, land, and long-duration investment become an AI advantage of its own? AI, therefore, creates a new kind of geography. Not simply where the software company is headquartered, but where the chips are made, where the electricity is available, where the data can legally sit, where the capital comes from, and where the customer ultimately runs the workload. This is why winning the model race is not necessarily the same as controlling the economics of AI. A model needs somewhere to run. It needs capital to train and serve. It needs developers to build around it. And it needs distribution to reach users. OpenAI. I put the point unusually clearly in 2026. Meeting AI demand requires compute, distribution, and capital. That sentence could almost be used as a map of the modern AI power struggle. Google can connect models to Search, Android, YouTube, Workspace, and Cloud. Microsoft can connect models to Azure, Windows, Microsoft 365, GitHub, and enterprise relationships. Amazon can connect AI to AWS, custom chips, and an enormous base of cloud customers. Meta can push AI through platforms already used by billions of people. The model is important, but distribution decides how often the model gets used and where the revenue can appear. And this is where geography meets distribution. A model does not enter every market through the same door. In one country, enterprise software may dominate. In another, the smartphone may be the main access point. Somewhere else, a local cloud provider, regulatory requirement, or national language model may matter more. So the global AI race may not produce one universal winner. It may produce different control points in different markets. There is another modern twist. The AI stack is not built only through ownership. It is also built through partnerships. Microsoft and OpenAI, Amazon and Anthropic, Google and Anthropic. The United States Federal Trade Commission studied these relationships and described equity rights, revenue sharing, cloud commitments, access to compute and information, and varying forms of consultation or control. Its staff report did not declare these partnerships illegal. It raised competition questions. Could a developer become more expensive to move from one cloud to another? Could access to scarce compute affect which challengers can scale? Could a cloud provider gain information or distribution advantages unavailable to others? This is where the Standard Oil comparison becomes useful, not as an accusation, but as a lens. When the supplier, infrastructure provider, financier, and distributor become tightly connected, the boundaries between layers begin to matter. But history becomes dangerous when the analogy is too neat. AI is not oil. Standard Oil sold a physical commodity through a far more concentrated industrial system. Its conduct was tested under antitrust law and ultimately found unlawful. Today's AI market is still moving rapidly. There are competing clouds, competing chips, proprietary models, open-weight models, local models, new startups, and national technology strategies. Customers can sometimes use several models at once. Developers can move workloads. Open-source tools can reduce dependence on a single vendor. New hardware can change the economics quickly. And competition is global. North America currently holds extraordinary strength in frontier models, hyperscale cloud, and chip design. Asia remains critical to semiconductor fabrication, electronics manufacturing, and technology supply chains, while countries across the region build their own AI capabilities. cloud infrastructure, and national technology strategies. Europe combines major industrial demand with a growing debate over cloud dependence, regulation, capital formation, and digital sovereignty. Other regions can compete through energy, capital, data center construction, local distribution, or national AI strategies. That means the AI system may become more geographically distributed even while individual layers remain highly concentrated. And that tension, global technology, concentrated control points, may become one of the defining competition questions of the next decade. So, the lesson is not that history is repeating. The lesson is that the structure of power deserves as much attention as the product demo. Standard Oil was shaped by people. Rockefeller's obsession with efficiency and control mattered. So did Henry Flagler's deal-making. Ida Tarbell's journalism changed public understanding. Regulators and judges changed the legal boundaries. AI is also being shaped by people making architectural choices now. Jensen Huang is building around accelerated computing. Satya Nadella is building around cloud and enterprise distribution. Sundar Pichai is tying AI to a full stack from custom chips to search. Andy Jassy is pushing AWS, custom silicon, and model choice. Mark Zuckerberg is spending heavily to make AI central to Meta's products. Sam Altman is assembling compute, capital, and distribution partnerships at enormous scale. None of those strategies guarantees permanent control, but each is a bet on where the next bottleneck will be. Regulators are watching those bottlenecks too. The FTC has highlighted potential switching cost and input access issues in major AI partnerships. And in the Google search case, U.S. remedies have focused directly on exclusive distribution arrangements. The reason is simple. Distribution can be power. For investors, businesses, and ordinary users, the useful question is therefore not who has the best AI model today. For a company in Germany, Singapore, India, Britain, the United States, or anywhere else, these questions are not theoretical. They affect what cloud you choose, which model you integrate, where your data sits, how much switching will cost, whether your AI economics improve as usage grows, and how much negotiating power you retain once AI becomes embedded in your operations. Ask 5 deeper questions. Where is the scarce input? Who owns the infrastructure? Who controls distribution? Who is paying for the capital intensity? And how easily can customers switch when the technology changes? Those questions matter because value can migrate. If chips become less scarce, power may move toward cloud efficiency. If models commoditize, distribution may matter more. If open models improve quickly, proprietary advantage may narrow. If electricity and data center capacity become the constraint, energy and infrastructure become strategic. The control point can move. And different regions may control different parts of the system. That is exactly why watching the whole system matters. Standard Oil became one of the most powerful companies in history because Rockefeller understood that the biggest opportunity was not simply the product. It was the system around the product. Today's AI giants are building very different businesses in a very different legal and technological world. But they are asking a familiar strategic question. Which layer of the system becomes indispensable? The chip? The cloud? The model? The data? The distribution channel? The energy system? Or the capital that makes all of them possible? The lesson from Standard Oil is not that every dominant company becomes a monopoly. It is that power often hides in the bottleneck. Because the next dominant AI company may not be the company with the smartest model. It may be the company, or even the country, that controls the scarce layer everyone else eventually needs. A chip, a cloud, an energy system, a distribution channel, a pool of capital, or something we have not yet recognized as the bottleneck. And that leaves one question open. As AI becomes global infrastructure, will power become more distributed around the world, or more concentrated around a handful of control points? And if you want to understand where AI economics are going next, do not only watch the models. Watch the control points. If this changed how you see the AI race, subscribe to Lessons Untold, where we look beyond the familiar story to the systems underneath it.